In this video, I would like to talk about a video that I actually saw online, and I must say it's a bit sad to see people in this situation. I mean, no one is immune to this because we are all experiencing the devastation that is caused by the coronavirus and the fact that places are shut down, businesses are closing down, and people are being laid off. But this really explains why we all need to um, think about the worst case when making decisions. I mean, they are in no way, and I'm going to refer to the video, I'm going to play it soon. They are in no way at fault, for being in this situation. It's not really their fault. But at the end of the day, this just reminds us to keep in mind and know that, things happen. Uncertainties will come up in our lifetime that we are not prepared for. And this is a typical example of that. Who would have thought that in 2020 there would be a virus that would spread all throughout the entire world, and people will be locked down, people will be able to go to work, and so on. So I'm going to play the video now, and we'll talk about it.
What would this look like at 2 a.m. on a Saturday?
People would be dancing on this stage. You end up having thousands of people in the course of a night.
Nightlife is a huge ecosystem, supporting nearly 300,000 jobs in New York City, from people who work in clubs and bars to freelancers who design how they look and sound.
Have you considered laying off your staff?
Yeah,
Are you going to do that?
we are. Unfortunately, yes.
With no income or job prospects for the foreseeable future, many don't know how they'll restart when the crisis is over.
I don't know, it just feels so hopeless.
One thing I'm going to say here is, first of all, we don't even know how long this crisis is going to last. I mean, it's been almost, 3 weeks now, and there is an end in sight. So we don't even know how long this is going to be a thing. But then, one thing I'm going to also add to this is that even after everything ends, like this pandemic, when they find a cure, or maybe the best case is to find a cure. If they can find a cure, I believe that things will really go back to normal very quickly, because all they just need to do is to send this vaccine to every organization, to everybody, get vaccinated, and everybody goes back to normal, and everything goes back to normal. But the problem is that even if we lock down the states, individual states that are considered the epicenter, what would eventually happen is that as long as this virus as long as there's no cure, as long as there's no vaccination to it, I believe it's going to be something that will hold a lot of companies back, especially like the travel industry. Because if you remember, China started banning flights. Now China has actually banned flights into their own country. And that's the way it's going to end, or that's the way it's going to continue. Because now there are no international flights to a majority of the places in the world, because nobody wants to bring in foreign individuals that might have this virus. And when you finally cure the nation, or at least you take care of your nation and make sure everybody's fine and safe, you also prevent people from bringing this virus in again and start this process again.
I was originally working in publishing and journalism, and then the recession hit, and I just completely moved over to bartending and bar management because it seemed a lot more recession-proof. And of course, I, at the time, was not considering pandemics at all.
John Barclay owns Bossa Nova Civic Club in Brooklyn, New York.
My number one priority is trying to get our employees paid, because I had 12, 15 people that have been just working here for essentially 7 years and making this place what it is, and now they're just in really, really bad shape.
So why would you lay off employees?
They understand that's the best path for unemployment insurance right now. There's just no way that this business could afford to pay them for months, especially considering the fact that most of their pay comes from tips.
I mean, this is just so sad to watch because, we you never think about something like this. You never think about being in a situation where the whole place is going to shut down. You never think about the fact that there's going to be a virus that is going to spread and maybe it's going to cause you to lose your job. Nobody really plans for that. And it is a very, terrible situation we're in.
I'm a freelance lighting designer. I have my own business and I hire other gig employees and freelance employees. All of the nightclubs that I would be working for, all of the dance floors currently under construction, all of those projects have either ground to a halt or are themselves canceled, as those nightclub owners are now wondering how they're going to pay their rent.
Most businesses, small businesses, only have about 2 weeks of cash flow, even in like good days. No one's arguing that we should be staying open during this period, but something has to give. We fundamentally believe that music and nightlife are part of personal identity, personal expression, and it's one of the things that makes New York City so vibrant and so culturally diverse. And so it's really important. I mean, you see people here that can really come here and be themselves when they can't necessarily be themselves in other elements of their life. And that's true of our audience as well as our staff. It's people who couldn't imagine doing anything else with their lives because this is where they belong. If we sort of as a society value that, nightlife is something that we should support and champion and save, we really do need that government assistance.
What is funny about this government assistance is that I remember in one of my videos I did a look up on the fact that the US government is in huge debt already. And now we're in this whole pandemic, with everything going downhill, the stock market is down, the Fed has had to reduce interest rates to almost zero. This is going to really, be a domino effect because, the government can always print more money, but at the end of the day, when you print more money, it weakens the value of the dollar, which means things will probably get more expensive, unfortunately. But obviously, we are not really worried about that part of the future. We're just worried about trying to solve the problem right now. But you got to remember that the world works in cycles, and we are in this cycle right now that will lead to the next one. And every decision that is made now will lead to the outcome in the future. But we're not going to worry about that for now because we just need to take care of this problem.
A government stimulus package could help small businesses, but many nightlife workers wonder if that will be enough to keep the industry going.
I know this video refers to the midnight life, people that work at night and all that, but one thing I'm also going to add here is that for the industry, like the transportation industry, the travel industries, like the hotels and the airlines and so on, these people, especially with the airlines, the agreement with the government assistance is that the agreement that they made to the government is that they will be able to use the funds from the government to stay afloat for the next 6 months, and that would avoid them cutting off people, delaying off people and all. But what happens after the 6 months is over? Because even as we speak right now, these airlines are already laying off some workers. They are giving voluntary furloughs to some of their workers already. So even let's hope that would help them stabilize things and that would carry them through the next 6 months. But what about after the 6 months is over? What happens next? Because what you need to consider is that unless there's a vaccine to this, it's just like malaria, all right? Malaria has been, especially in Africa, it's also common here, but it's still common in Africa. And I grew up in Nigeria, and it's something that we are so used to that it's there. It's just something you get, you use the medicine, 3 days, 4 days, you're fine, and life goes on. But with this kind of virus, the coronavirus, you don't want it hanging around somewhere else, because what would eventually happen is somebody's gonna bring it over to the nation that is already cured, and then you'll then start all over again because now you spread it all over again. So the best thing that can really happen is to find a cure, but they said it might take up to a year or so for the cure to be available. So for the next 6 months that they're saving these airlines and helping them out, what happens after then?
Some of them have started raising money online through GoFundMe and Patreon, but they say they can't make up for systemic failure through a patchwork of internet fundraisers.
I want to believe that this community, through reaching out to one another, can support each other, but that's like asking us to collectively pull each other up by our own bootstraps. Now with no events, with no inflow of capital to keep all of this turning, then we're all just collectively going broke.
Coronavirus is crashing into long-standing problems. 40% of Americans can't afford an emergency $400 expense.
And I'm gonna pause it right there, because in one of my videos, I remember talking about emergency fund, and I remember reading about this article that actually about 40% of people in America cannot afford to put down $400 towards an emergency fund because they just don't have it. And that is the truth, and that's the reality. The problem with this, and one of the issues associated with this, is the fact that we have all gotten so relaxed to the fact that there's a lot of jobs, and we know that there is side gigs like Uber, and we can deliver food for people, we can do all this side also to make money. And why put down some money aside? Mind you, the new phones are always in the thousands of dollars at this point. So things have really gotten expensive, but there's so many jobs as well. But like I said, who would have thought that there will be a virus in the year 2020 that will spread all around the world and will lead to shutdowns and lead to layoffs? And that's just the situation we find ourselves right now.
And between 2008 and 2017, 1 in 4 New York residents were paying half or more of their income in rent, according to a recent report from the state.
Unless the city puts some kind of clamp on rent for businesses and also individuals themselves, I don't see how people can survive. They're just bleeding money.
Are you worried you might have to close down forever?
Terrified, yeah. I think everybody in this world is.
What would you?
And this is the part that is really scary about this lockdown, and the fact that the economy is probably going to tank even further due to this. Because when small businesses are unable to run, and they're not really getting much assistance from the government, that's the truth, the end result would be more people will be laid off, and eventually people won't be able to keep up with their payments, with their car loans, with their house, school loans, and things like that. And when that money is not going into the government, the money is not, these industries are not getting the money back. What would eventually happen is that they start taking, their houses, start taking their cars from them, only for them to be sold at ridiculous, just like 2008. You bought a house for $250,000. You were unable to make up your payments. The bank takes back the house from you, and the bank needs money. So there's someone that's willing to pay $150,000 for the house, cash. Well, you have to let it go because they need money to stay afloat themselves. So they have to sell that at a loss. And eventually the government has to come back again to bail out these banks, bail out these industries. And this might have a long-term effect. And that's my fear right now, because it's not even the fact that, this short-term coronavirus of a thing, because this is not going to last forever, but the fact that all the small businesses are beginning to shut down, and people have been laid off. That is my worry. If that leads to a certain amount of people that have been laid off, and people are unable to fund, their lifestyles or pay their rent, and unemployment is high, then default rate will be high on loans as well. And again, those industries, another set of industries, would have to be bailed out.
You do.
I have no clue. I'd probably have to move back in with my mother.
Do you think it'll be able to go back to the way it was when the crisis is over?
That for a long time. And I think that it's going to look very, very different.
After a pandemic of this nature, where crowds are the danger, how do we ever look at engaging en masse the same way?
Yeah, that's that video. And actually there's a part of it that they actually interviewed some other groups of people. If you want to look it up, you can actually go to CNN to check it out under CNN Business. You'll be able to see some of these clips, and they interviewed some groups of people that, some of them had like cancer, and they needed this money to stay afloat, and there was no way they could actually keep the business running, because it's a type of business where you have to go to work, people have to come to you, but nobody's coming, and they need that money to stay afloat. So a lot of people will be affected, and the goal here is to make sure that we stay safe. That's the most important thing. But one other thing I'd like to add is that, we cannot live in fear, and we cannot live in fear, and we have to also face the reality. And what I mean by reality is that, if we find ourselves in a situation where we do not have our income coming in, well, one of the things we can start doing right away is to cut back on our expenses. Call all your loan providers, let them know what is going on, be honest about it, but let them know that, hey, I cannot afford to pay you down, because they also know what is going on and they are probably affected as well, which that will give you a bit of credibility, let me put it that way, because they know that you're trying. So instead of them calling you, you're actually calling them to let them know ahead of time. That won't stop them from calling you when your loans are due, but the point is, you just putting that leg forward, or putting that that information out there for them to know ahead of time, places you in a different place, in their list of people that needs to be called, or that needs to make their payment or something. But the key thing here is we cannot live in fear. We have to stay careful, obviously, because like I said, it's very important to keep our health the way we need it, because without our health, we can't even do anything. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the like button. Leave your comments below. I would like to know what you think about, the event that is going on right now, and I hope to see you in my next video.